morning. It is 11 a.m. on August 11th. This is the monthly St. Louis County Board of Police Commissioners Board meeting. May we have our roll call?
Commissioner Ashworth?
Here.
Commissioner Banks?
Here.
Commissioner Kessler?
Be joining us.
Commissioner Schwer?
Here. Start with our pledge.
Will you please rise and join me in the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Today is our first board meeting with Chief Gregory at the helm. We are grateful for his service to the department and our community. The board has spent time over the past few weeks with Chief Gregory discussing the department and the board and the chief's working relationship. We're excited to be working with Chief Gregory and to continue our collaborative work with the department leadership and the department as a whole. Chief, we will challenge you, we will recognize your victories, we will work together to address difficult issues, and we will celebrate the department's achievements. We're confident in your leadership and your abilities to move this department forward. On behalf of the entire board, I look forward to working with you. Thank you.
I'll say it again, it's an honor for me to serve in this position. Great group of people to work with here and out there. So yes, thank you. Appreciate it. I just want to get right into the report. Well, not right into the report, but if we would you stand for a minute? I want to a moment of silence for two officers that were killed in the line of duty, one in Oakland, Illinois, another officer in Chicago. If you would join a moment of silence for them. Officer Ella French in Chicago, in the watch was 8/7 of 21. And police officer Brian Pierce of Brooklyn, his in the watch was 8/4. Thank you, I appreciate it. We'll get into the report, and the first item on the report is our budget report. We submitted our 2022 budget to Dr. Page. We've asked for an increase of about $5 million compared to the 2021 budget. The bulk of that $5 million that we're asking for is contractual money for the policeman's CBA and the sergeant's CBA. That's the largest bulk that we're asking for. So we're hoping that they'll approve that amount. And there's some other items that Josh will cover here shortly. Another part of that 5,000 was close to 3,000 that we're looking for to improve our telephone system for service and connectivity for our cell phones, our wireless car videos, things like that. So that's a part of that $5 million we're asking for. And then we're also asking for some money for cars. We have not purchased cars over the last year. Cars that we do have are pretty much down and out. We're spending a lot of money for maintenance, so we're looking for money to do that. Phil, if you would cover anything that I missed, or did I miss anything?
No, I think you did a great job. You know, that's really the highlights of it. Or the biggest part of our budget is payroll and fringe benefits. And we have contracts for the CBA where we have to include those, and those are about $3 million. Then there's about $2 million in there that are for non-contractual pay increases that we're hoping will be approved. You know, we have to submit them. For them to consider. Doesn't mean that they will or they won't, but we're sure hopeful for a professional staff and the lieutenants and above. Those are the main ones in the salaries and fringes. And then in the operating costs, like the chief mentioned, that phones have become really high item with all the cell phones and data fees and all, you know, technology is costing us a lot of money. So that's really the only place I really added money that they may question. Otherwise, it's contract services for cleaning, things like that, because their salaries go up, so we pay them. And then, of course, the vehicles, because we, last year, in order to stick to the target amount, we didn't buy all the cars we needed, so of course it kicks forward and we have to buy each. So that's really all I have for the 2022 budget. Do you have any questions on that?
Additional staffing requests within that at all?
No, we did hold to that just anybody, any positions we have budgeted right now, we included, but we didn't ask for anything new.
Will this budget be considered at the same time our requests for some of the COVID-related federal funds?
That's handled really by, the council that's at a way higher level than I am. They, they're determining how they want to spend that. So this is just for our general fund budget for the first part.
So two separate.
Yes, absolutely. And then the 2021, where we are right now, it's pretty similar to what I told you last time, where our overtime is creeping up. And we also have got a lot more payouts of people retiring and leaving. We're way over our budget on that. And so, the two are related. We're having staffing problems. And so that causes overtime to go up. And other than that, we're pretty consistent and still think, okay, for the year. Okay. Questions? Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Joe. Next on the agenda today is the crime report. I just want to kind of lead in with this. We get these numbers from our precinct side, the numbers that Sarah's going to provide you of. There are a lot of other things going on out there in reference to crime that we're dealing with. Our violent crime unit, since February of this year, this is just them going out 1 day a week, about 5 hours a day, of a targeted area that they're going to address. And with what they've done since February, they seized something like 154 guns. They made 241 arrests, and they've seized about $197,000 in asset. So it's just not the patrol, not that we're doing a great job, but we have other initiatives with addressing some of the crime that we're dealing with, and they're doing a great job. The precincts that I know for a fact, I think Sarah's going to start counting this in our numbers, our guns seized. We get asked quite often, how do we prevent homicides? How do we prevent personal abuse? How do we prevent, domestic violence? And one of the best ways that we can do this is through our donors to try to get as many guns off the street as we can. That helps us. That we have advocates working with that to help us with those situations. But just kind of an example of what some of the other units are doing. Sarah.
PowerPoint up for me? Sorry, a little hard to get. Okay. So our numbers are going to look a little bit different this month. We have some staffing issues in care that has caused a delay in getting numbers submitted to the state, but I wanted to still present some things for you guys. So I put a few things together still. So first off, this slide pretty much looks the same as always. As you can see, we're still pretty much in line for all of our different metrics here. Please note the Narcan saves are still down. As we talked about, EMS and fire have been using Narcan for the scene. And so I expect that to stay down in comparison to previous years. Additionally, I added gun seized, for the total number of firearms, and then also the incidents in which at least one gun was seized. So as you can see, for the number of incidents, we're actually up compared to the last 2 years. I think that this is probably in part due to the violent crime initiative that Chief Gregory was mentioning. And we're up for the total number of firearms seized compared to last year, still slightly down compared to 19, but the fact that the incidence is higher just means that they're getting out there, they're seizing guns from in places where they're not supposed to have them. So that's very good to see. For our crime data, I pulled the 2021 data from our care system to make sure that there's something to show today. In 2021, our violent crime is pretty even with where it's been in the past few years. Our property crime is actually down. In particular, aggravated assault firearms are kind of holding steady with where they were last year. I'm glad that they're not increasing further because nationwide the trend is still to see an increase in assaults with firearms. So it's really good that we're holding that steady. I'm also seeing a big decrease in burglaries compared to particularly last year, but really every year. And that's still, I believe, due to the pandemic. People are just at home more. Finally, I'm also seeing a decrease in motor vehicle thefts compared to last year, which is good. As you can see, last year our motor vehicle thefts were a lot higher. And I have some additional maps I wanted to share. Okay. So I wanted to show you some maps of just our jurisdiction and kind of where crime occurs within our jurisdiction. So this is crime against persons. That includes aggravated assaults, homicides, robberies. And it just shows you really in 2020, our aggravated assaults, homicides, robberies were very concentrated in North County, particularly the Spanish Lake, Glasgow Village area, and then also in Jennings. And this year we still see Jennings, Castle Point, that type of area having a high concentration, but you can also see there's this area in South County that's starting to have a little bit more of the proportion of crime. But for violent firearms crimes, aggravated assault firearms, homicides, and robberies, we see that it's still very concentrated in North County. So that's why a lot of times our violent crime initiatives are focused up in that region, is because that's where our violent crime with firearms particularly is occurring. For crimes against property, we've been seeing a decrease in our crimes against property, so burglaries, larcenies, and motor vehicle thefts in North County, in Jennings, and we haven't seen that same decrease as much in Afton and South. So this is the mall, and like the Costco and Target, all that kind of in that region, but that's most of the mall there. There's a lot of things that occur at the mall or the parking lot surrounding it.
It's like nice progress in North County on that.
Yeah, absolutely. They've really reduced their property crime. And in particular, the next slide shows they've really reduced their vehicle thefts. As you can see, the proportion of where motor vehicle thefts are occurring, it's much more in South County and Afton now than it was before. They're still having huge problems with motor vehicle thefts down there, but that overall decrease we're seeing is because of the huge decrease in North County.
Was that a specific initiative?
Since I believe just since they started doing a lot of focused efforts there based on Teneo in Jennings in particular, we've just been seeing those crimes decrease. So I think the focused efforts that they're making in North County and Jennings are effectively reducing crime. I can't say for sure it's those initiatives because there's always a million factors that affect crime, but we started seeing those decreases around the time that we started those initiatives. The last one I wanted to include, this wasn't in the presentation I originally sent to you, I put it together this morning, was some information about catalytic converter thefts. As you can see, that's also a problem that's mostly affecting our South and Afton precincts. So South, Afton is the 3rd precinct, South is the 4th. As you can see, they have the most catalytic converter thefts of any of the precincts. We've had a total of 303 incidents this year so far. And within those, it's about 660 catalytic converters stolen. And in these incidents, they range from 1 catalytic converter stolen all the way up to 80 catalytic converters stolen. Someone had a van that had 80 catalytic converters. They had documentation. They got these catalytic converters and someone stole all 80 of them out of their van. So this is still a big problem. As you can see, July had more of these incidents. I will be continuing to give captains information such as this map
and more detailed maps as well to try to help them. The problem with these catalytic converter thefts is they're really difficult. It's a very fast crime, so the officers, if they're not in the right location at the right time, it's going to be very hard for them to stop these from occurring. So the officers are out there doing a lot of patrols and trying to find people who could be involved in these. I know they've made some very good arrests, particularly in South Afton and Fenton. So you can see Fenton also is lit up on this one. So this is one of the things that we're very focused on this year to try to reduce down. That's about all. You know, the directed calls, the self-initiated calls, they look about the same as always. Slight increases due to July being summer, which is what we see for directed calls. And generally decreases, though some are actually increasing for self-initiated this month, which I like to see. Nothing out of the ordinary here though. And then for traffic stops, we're still down compared to where we normally would be, but those numbers are starting to creep up. I believe we've made around 19,000 traffic stops so far this year. It's definitely down from previous years, but I don't have the exact numbers. Our person who does the traffic stops is out for weeks. Do you have any questions?
So can you go back to the first stack?
Yes.
Chart? I mean, the numbers, that's very nice to see, but it's counterintuitive. You hear about the crime rates going up, and
Yeah.
crime issues going up, and that would signify different.
Yeah, and I think it's because certain crimes do go up. As I think the crimes that people are noticing, the crimes that people hear about the most in the media, the ones that are the most concerning are those aggravated assault firearms, those homicides, and frankly, those are going up. As I talked about before, you know, our numbers for this year are slightly lower than the reality that you hear from Lieutenant Longworth because we happen to have to wait until it's approved data, and that can take a minute with homicides. Those aggravated assaults, well, yeah, we're holding steady with last year. Look at that increase from 2019 to 2020. Those are very serious crimes that the media really focuses on. When the media really focuses on something, then that's what the narrative is. But we have been really lucky with our larcenies, burglaries, and motor vehicle thefts. So again, as you saw on those maps, some areas of the county aren't experiencing decreases. So it just depends where you are, if you're seeing a huge decrease in that. A lot of our overall numbers are really driven by North County. It's our largest precinct. It has the highest number of crimes, but also the highest population.
Would it make more sense to look, and this is not a criticism of all this data.
No, that's fine.
Great, but if we looked at these numbers by region or by precinct,
Yeah.
we get a better understanding of the trends?
Yeah, and I can do that. Right now, that's very complicated with how we submit our data. We submit our data to the state as a whole. But pretty soon it will be a lot easier, and I can certainly do that. For our purposes, our data is messier. We don't look at just approved incidents usually, and we do break it down by precinct all the time. For the purposes of this, it's a little more complex. I can certainly work on that for the summary data. Right now, the NIVERS data, I cannot quite get that to you broken down by precinct, but I will be able to soon. There's some reports being written in our record management system. That will make it a lot easier.
I think that would be nice.
Yeah.
Do anything.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll be okay.
No, I think it will be as well. It's just the limitation of the system right now. It's always been my plans have been to add that for you as soon as the technology really allows it. Any other questions?
Yes, but not right now.
Okay, well, you can email me or reach out anytime. I'm happy to answer your questions for you. I cannot get out of this.
Well,
Oh, there we go. Thanks, Gary.
I was reading an article in the paper about the criminal justice department in Huntsville, and I made a statement about the fact that more police officers in high crime areas, you will see the numbers going down. And I think that's what's happening in St. Louis City. I know that's what's happening with that violent crime unit. They go out and they get intelligence every week. They pick an area where they want to go and deal with crime. That's where you see these numbers that I expressed to you where they come from. Yeah, the number we put out there. Mr. Becker? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chief.
Morning. So if I may, just to give you an overview of what I'm going to talk about, I'll start out with the traditional staffing report and next go to address Commissioner Ashworth's request that I focus or point you in the direction of what we're doing with respect to African American recruiting and give you an overall idea of where recruitment is at now, as well as some of the retention issues that I'd like to point out and bring to your attention. And then finally end with the NBQ data that was requested. So with respect to the traditional staffing report, we have 56 vacancies currently. That's 923 actual commission and 979 authorized. So we're down 53 police officers at this time today, 53 police officers, 1 sergeant, 1 lieutenant, and 1 captain. Now that doesn't take into account several of the retirements or many of the retirements that are now on the books, but we haven't accounted for those people that are gone, starting right at the top with Chief Barton and then on down to some captains, lieutenants, and sergeants. So by the end of 21, if not sooner, we'll have 11 or more sergeant vacancies to fill. And that's why we called for the special process with respect to a sergeant's promotional process that's coming up in a couple of weeks. And then there's also a captain's promotional process that was called for by Chief Barton, and that test is on this Friday. So I think as I indicated last time, the class 203 at the academy started with 10 recruits. We still have 10 recruits. There are others for municipalities also, but they're all progressing well. The start date for class 204, the next academy class, will be January 3rd, 2022. The professional staff numbers right now, we have authorized of 368. We have 329 actual professional staff members. That's a vacancy rate of 39. There's a high level with security officers. They're down 12. The dispatchers are down just 3. And report clerks and record clerks are down a total of 9. And we have 4 cadet vacancies, which we're actively trying to fill all of those. So the public safety dispatcher class started July 6th with 11. They have a capacity of 12, partly because of space issues, partly because of training issues, and partly because of COVID. So I'm pleased with that number for the time being, that there's 11 in the PSD class. So just as a quick reference on COVID, we have 10 employees out right now, and about 7 or 8 of them were not vaccinated. So we're seeing the unvaccinated tending to contract it and having symptoms. None of the symptoms, fortunately, are severe, but we do encourage everyone to get the vaccine.
Charlie, we have a feel for what the vaccination rate is.
It's about 55%. The last time we checked, and that was about 5 weeks ago. And in addition, I would add that we have 8 on military separation right now. But do point out for everyone's knowledge that the county police do encourage and support reservists and guardsmen. The trends on retirements and resignations continue. You know, a typical trend is around 5 for police officers per month on retirements and resignations, and it varies with professional staff. Right now, that's up above that 5 average over the past few years to 8.1 per month, and professional staff is up 5.8 per month on retirements and resignations. So we've talked about that before. We know we have a significant staffing issue, and I'll address address some of that later in my talk here. So the authorization for commission staffing, just as another point of reference, was lowered from 1,014 to 978 in order to provide for professional staff contract raises. And that was actually something that was negotiated and approved, discussed, if you will, with the FOP and with county government. So with respect to specifically African-American recruiting, I would go back to what I talked about last month with the recruiting plan and point out and emphasize what things are African-American specific, if not individually as a whole, targeting African-Americans along with other minority groups and other potential applicants. So as I indicated, we have 3 full-time recruiters now. We're going to be adding a professional staff person. That's an internal promotion or transfer, if you will, that's being held up by other staffing issues elsewhere in the department. But soon we'll have that other person. The cadet staff is a significant source of hiring African Americans because a significant portion of the cadets, about half, are African American. Another point that I brought up about targeting ethnic and cultural affairs and so forth, that would include targeting African Americans in various areas, whether it's specific schools, at HBCUs, at other colleges where the African American community is available and interested in going into law enforcement. Same with job fairs. Some job fairs target specifically minority groups, and we're making that same effort. In addition, working with the Urban League, working with North County ministers, working with other folks to try and increase our diversity. And more of a long-term recruitment strategy because of the timeline, our cadets, explorers, the CAPLE program, school resource officers, those sorts of things are more of a long-term recruiting goal. We have SROs in many schools, and the Cadet and Explorer program also reaches out to African Americans. The CAPLE program has a significant majority of African American participants. And with the social and broadcast and print media that I referenced last time, a lot of that is targeted toward African Americans. That includes advertising in the Black pages, targeting with respect to certain zip codes, with respect to Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and those sort of things. We'd love to advertise in the St. Louis American, but it's very, very expensive. Our budget is very limited. I know I referenced last time Women's Day in Law Enforcement. That's going to be October 9th. And we're going to do the same with Minority Day in Law Enforcement, where we focus on minorities, African Americans included, in order to expose them, almost like a day-long ride-along, if you will, to expose them to all aspects of the police department, whether it's discharging a taser, talking with other officers that are similar to them demographically, or seeing our equipment and talking to some of the folks in our specialized unit. And I mentioned the HBCUs, we're targeting that heavily. And then I think last time I mentioned Colonel Bader's effort of getting 2 applicants through. Colonel Sack was talking to somebody at his credit union, and she has now applied to be a dispatcher. So thank you, Colonel Sack. And I bring that up as an example that we're all recruiters, that we all represent the department on a daily, if not minute by minute basis, and we all become recruiters. And there's nothing better than that personal connection to get somebody through. Other folks have come up to me and made recommendations. And one commander came up to me at the last command staff and made a recommendation, which I appreciated, because I'll take all the ideas, we'll take them all. The idea that he mentioned, we're already doing, and that's very much on a granular level, and that is we look at college athletic rosters of not just HBCUs, but Lindenwood, Maryville, outlying universities, or look for local kids, local students that are going to other schools but have a likelihood, like many St. Louisans, to come back to St. Louis to live and raise their family. So when we see that there's a criminal justice major, a sociology major, someone that might be interested in law enforcement, we are targeting those individuals and have that one-on-one relationship that a recruiter needs to have. And I would encourage everybody else to do the same. If they have somebody that they want at this department, encourage them, support them, and be a mentor to them and walk them through the application process, get them going, let them know that we care about them and we want them to work. I mentioned last time the local military installations. One of our recruiters is a captain in the National Guard. I think he's very savvy and adept at the military experience, and he in particular is going to be targeting the military installations. And I remember I read Colin Powell's biography about 20 years ago, and he said, this is 20 years ago, he said the United States Army is exemplary in its diversity. And I think that's an excellent recruiting ground to increase our diversity from the military applicants. So that's just kind of an overall perspective on African-American recruiting. With respect to the overall recruiting plan and so forth, I think right now we have 3 recruiters who emit a positive image of the department. They're very professional, they're very enthusiastic. I'll throw out kudos to Lieutenant Webb. He supervises them. He's doing a great job of coordinating them and targeting specifically all these things that we listed before. And by the way, the recruiting plan's a team effort. It's not one person that came up with these ideas. Recruiting plans in the past have been about 3 or 4 pages long. This one is 18 pages. So the reflecting of a positive image of the St. Louis County Police Department is, I think, crucial. And you'll see when we get into the NBQ data, the applications overall are down in the past 3 years. So that obviously creates any kind of hiring challenge, whether it's for minorities or not. We are going to, as we develop more of the data, the NBQ data, by the way, was culled by hand. We didn't have the software. We didn't have the automation to be able to do that efficiently. So again, Personnel Services Unit, they put in a lot of work to get these numbers and put them together. And hopefully in the near future, we'll have better automation at our disposal. But that's the goal, is to make these, the hiring, the recruiting, the retention more metric driven. But we can't get there until we get the data, and we need the automation also. So in regard to retention, I think there's a lot of different things, just like recruiting, that goes into retention. And the first thing is enhanced communication. And I'll be the first to admit, and I think everyone in this room will admit, we can always improve on communication. I think perhaps that's the last frontier. And that starts with immediate supervisors to their immediate subordinates, of having a relationship and mentoring their subordinates. The performance review has a section which addresses a wish list, if you will, of where that officer, where that employee is going, or where they want to go. And that discussion should be had with the immediate supervisor, who plays a key role because they have day-to-day interactions with that employee. And there are also many committees that didn't even exist 20 years ago. There's a Chiefs Committee which meets once a month, and that Chief Gregory wants to enhance in a way to make it more productive, make it more results driven, if you will. And we've been working on that in these past 2 weeks. There's, as you know, a Diversity and Inclusion Committee. They have input on general orders. They give us great ideas. That's run by Sergeant Nichols, the commander of the Diversity and Inclusion Unit. We also have a uniform and equipment committee. They give input on, they want to wear load bearing vests. They want to wear this. They want this equipment. So we figure out if that's possible to do. We try to figure out the financing for it and try to move things forward to make it a better place for the employees to work. It's not without disagreement. Sometimes there's some interesting suggestions, but we listen, we try to work with them and have a dialogue. We have, as you know, also, we have regular meetings with the FOP, ESOP, and outside community groups such as UCAN, the Urban League, and so forth. We also have something that Chief Gregory has pushed, division meetings, where we give each division commander has a meeting with their commanders and get that input. It's a two-way communication stream to the divisions, supervisors and leaders, and then we report back to Chief Gregory as to what was accomplished, what were the topics, what's on their mind with respect to any kind of concerns within the division. And lastly, I know Chief Gregory is committed to better communication with the department. And again, these past 2 weeks, we've been working on a lot of things and have something in the near future. Training opportunities is another big deal. The St. Louis County Police Department's officers are trained at hourly anyway at twice the rate of the post requirement of 24 hours. It's most officers get over 50 hours of training. Some get even more. There are 2 lieutenants and a communications supervisor that are going to a command college that's conducted by Northwestern University. It's going to be held at the Highway Patrol. They earn about 6 hours of college credit. It's a demanding, high-level education for mid-level managers. So making those opportunities available when possible, it fills in that high-level training that employees see. The work opportunities, I think, makes for a good retention argument with the St. Louis County Police Department. We have a variety of precincts. We have a personal car program. Would I like more personal cars for the officers? You bet I would, and so would all of the command staff. But we're working on that and trying to expand that personal car program. The county police have multiple specialized units. Most of the applicants here that sit in this room for a final review board, they talk about that as the attraction to come to this department because of the specialized units. A lot of people mention the K9 unit. I guess people like dogs, but we also have what I think is a premier regional, if not national, tactical operations unit. We have a premier homicide bureau. The national average for clearance on homicides is 60%, and our units, the homicide unit, is a 90% clearance rate. So it's a very professional department and a lot of opportunities. We also have a wellness. Yes, ma'am.
Jump in with a question. When our department members submit their resignation, do you keep track of the reasons they give for that resignation?
We do, and I've generalized on that in the past. And what we were doing before COVID started was starting to automate that, and we're working on that again in order to get some data, some metrics to get an idea of why they're leaving. And I alluded to that last time. I know we talked about it.
So I'm not asking for data, but just the general feeling right now until we get data. Is it because they're not taking advantage of what we view as the attractions, the continuous education, the training, the opportunities, the variety? Is it something else?
And what I said last time was it's going to another agency. And frankly, everybody knows this. A lot of people are going to St. Charles County. They have a better personal car program. I don't think they have a better financial package when you take into account our benefits and so forth. But they can get a bump up in pay, and then leaving law enforcement altogether. Whether that's for an increase in pay or they just don't want to be involved in law enforcement. Those are the 2 biggest categories.
Are there specific, when you do those exit interviews, are there specific summaries done with each person as they leave that exit interview?
Yes, sir, there is. So
That's why I don't know if Michelle's asking that. Maybe we could actually read through some of those.
Sure. And what it is it's a form,
Mhm.
a form for everything. And I try to do sergeants and above, when I can. And other officers and Sergeant Hauser, Lieutenant Webb will interview the officers. The idea is to have a comfortable environment. They will be frank as to their answers, and then a 3-page report is actually completed and then submitted up the chain to me, Deputy Chief and Chief.
I'd like to read those.
Yes, sir.
Are they anonymous or are they?
They are not.
No.
They have the names on them. Now, we do represent that they are confidential in the sense they just go up the chain. I consider the board the top of the chain, so you're certainly welcome to see them.
I don't want to do anything that would jeopardize the department feeling free to speak, so I'm gonna go ahead and propose, will you anonymize those?
We will.
Will you give that to us? I don't think it's necessary for us to know.
No, you're right.
And then eventually we'll be able to give you a bigger picture with the data and the metrics and so forth. So the wellness unit I started to talk about, I think that's a cutting edge concept in law enforcement. In the near future, Lieutenant Roach will be addressing the board and talking about what the wellness unit actually does. And I think it's good for the public and the rest of the department to have that reinforced. Lieutenant Roach is also going around to roll calls and so forth, and he'll be at in-service to really get a big target group to let them know what it is exactly he does. And I want to give some credit to a lot of folks on the wellness unit. It's like I said, it's cutting edge. It didn't start until December of last year. Chief Elmer wanted it. We just didn't have the funding for it. Chief Barton got it across the finish line, and Chief Gregory is supporting it. So that's very important. I'm also appreciative of the FOP. They've sent people to training. They've learned about it. They know what's involved in a wellness unit. They've pushed the issue, and they've been a big supporter and a good partner on it. And then Colonel Ludwig was heavily involved in it and getting it across the finish line. And then finally, I mentioned Lieutenant Roach. I mean, he's been living it and learning it and pushing for it for at least the past 3 or 4 years. So I really think that was a team effort, and it's going to end up being a very good program. One aspect of the wellness unit is the peer support team. And I might have talked about this before, but we're going to have initial training for about 12 to 15 volunteer officers and professional staff to become peer support team members. The ultimate goal is 10% of the workforce. We'll see if we can get there. If we get anywhere close, I will be happy, and I'm sure Lieutenant Rhodes would be happy. The concept of the peer support team is to have that support member, somebody that's trained and is connected to resources such as a counselor, therapist, or what have you, to be able to recognize when there's issues, big or small, with another employee, get them the resources they need, be the support system that they need. And I think that goes a long way to just retention, morale, and just overall wellness for any employee. One of the Teneo recommendations was to do a specialized assignment analysis, and we're going to be implementing that in the fall, where executive command staff and the chiefs will review and have presentations from every specialized unit, right on down to the rank and file employee on up to the top commander, and analyze the effectiveness and so forth of the specialized unit and each of its employees. The idea will be that hopefully it will motivate employees to perform well, and it will also give opportunities if someone needs to be transferred out to put someone in that's very anxious to go into a specialized unit. And I think those kind of opportunities that I talked about before with the complexity of our department will go a long way in improving retention and improving morale. And of course, I have written down pay. Compensation is always appreciated. and always goes a long way for retention. We have started at executive command staff to talk at Chief Gregory's initiation to talk about selection process adjustments. What do we want to do about PT testing? What do we want to do about education requirements? What do we want to do about perhaps giving some credit for a long, successful work history when that person doesn't necessarily have military, college education, or prior law enforcement experience? We are talking about those. I had a very good, productive conversation yesterday in command staff, executive command staff. We're going to continue to have those conversations and then get something to the board for general order approval in the near future to address those needs. And then with respect to the hiring stats for 2021 so far, we've hired 26 commissioned officers, 51 non-commissioned personnel. That's a total of 77 employees. And of that percentage, or of those employees, the percentage of minorities hired is 23% minority, and that's about 16% African American and 7% either Hispanic, Asian, or other mixed race and so forth. And so that's a total of 30% of our hires so far in 2021 have been minorities. And that's, as I'll illustrate with the NBQ data, that is progress.
All hires, and what about the
Commissioned is 26, non-commissioned is 51. So the minority hire for commission is 23%. And for non-commissioned, it's 33%. That's an average of 30% total for the total hires of those 77. So the current challenges we have, and they're not without some resolution. The COVID restrictions have hurt us with respect to schools and military bases and so forth. We'll address those the best we can by using Zoom, using the telephone, using what we can to be able to make those important one-on-one contacts and recruiting that I was talking about before. There's generally and I think this is nationwide, a shortage of workers, or at least a shortage of applicants or people who are willing to apply. And that's reflected in the NBQ numbers that we're going to talk about. Some of the problem is a lack of competitive pay. For example, the records clerks downstairs, they start at $15.51 an hour. They do get benefits, they get retirement benefits, health insurance, and so forth. So I think it's better than a job at Amazon, but we have had this year 8 applicants who have been given conditional offers, and they don't want to take the pay. Even after they're informed of that, they're turning the job down after we've been through the entire background process because it's just not enough money. Hopefully we can address that and many other pay issues in the professional staff CBA that we're going to be negotiating here in the very near future. And the response to that lack of competitive pay is, like I said, we have health insurance, we have paid time off, retirement plans, we have the 451 savings plan, we have very affordable life insurance too. Things that we have to emphasize, that the recruiters, background investigators, they do emphasize that when they're conducting their recruiting and background. And then lastly, as I mentioned before, the negative media attention. I think the support of our board and the St. Louis County Council goes a long way to negate that negative attention. And then you should have the what I call the NBQ numbers. I think that's an oversimplification. And I know it's a lot to digest. I know that you'll have more questions in the future about it. And of course, I'm available to discuss those issues. But I just want to point out a few things. We give you the highlights, kind of steer you in the direction for questions now or further analysis. So I'm looking at the 2020 application statistics. Again, these were pulled manually. And it took quite some time. So in 2020, we had 2,177 total number of applications. There's a caveat there that number of applications includes the people who apply to multiple positions. So that hasn't been separated out, if you will. And then as you look through back to 2018 and 2019, you'll see 2019, we had 2,710 applications, and in 2018, 3,359. So nearly more than a 50% decrease from 18 to 19 in just the total number of applications. And then it's broken down that I believe is self-explanatory, but into commissioned applications and professional staff applications. And then what the percentage is overall of that total number of applications. And then demographically, we have the applications broken down by race. And again, it's the categories white, black, Hispanic, Asian, or other people. It's all self-identified, by the way. Folks who identify as being of two or more races.
Can I interrupt you for a moment?
Yes, ma'am.
It's not just qualified, so I see the numbers, but how can you talk to us about what makes the applicant not best qualified?
Yes, and so we have and there's way more detail to this short answer, but I'll try to answer as briefly as I can. When an applicant goes through, when they get past the pre-screen, yes, they're qualified. They haven't admitted to committing a felony 3 months ago or drug use 3 months ago. They've indicated that for a police officer, they fit one of the categories: a year county experience, military experience, prior law enforcement experience, or 64 hours of education. So they get past that pre-screen. Then they get into the background process. And a variety of things can happen. One, the background investigator finds something out that the applicant did not disclose. The applicant themselves will reveal to the background investigator, hey, I forgot this, I forgot that. That's added into the analysis. And in addition, there are also in that category of NVQs, but we'll get to that on the data, there are voluntary withdrawals too. Hey, you know what, I changed my mind. Hey, I took another job. Those kind of reasonings. And we're tracking that data now, that we have a category of voluntary withdrawal. And then we have not best qualified categories that I was referring to before. Recent drug use, they have to be drug-free for a year. Reasonable criminal history, they can't be convicted of a Class A misdemeanor. If they are, Class A misdemeanor is the approval of the chief of police. I think, for example, we had somebody who didn't have a fishing license and was stopped by an applicant that didn't have a fishing license when he was very young, and was stopped by a park ranger or conservation agent. And the agent said, hey, you got your phone, go ahead and buy a license real quick and you'll be okay. Well, he still committed the offense of fishing without a license. The chief of police approved that applicant going forward. It's just an example of some of the flexibility in the lines for criminal history. A poor work history, it might be revealed in the background investigation, whether it's by the applicant or determined by the background investigator doing their due diligence, that someone has had 10 jobs and ends up quitting by being a no-show, no-call. That kind of a thing, that lack of reliability, that lack of dedication, to the employer. Those kind of things can add up. There'll be testing failures also. If someone's trying to be a dispatcher and they can't type, we give them a couple other chances. Then we tell them, you go on to Google, there's a bunch of internet typing classes that they can take to improve their speed. You have to be able to type if they're in communications. And some people have taken that effort and then come back months later, retested, and been successful. Some folks just give up. And then there's the final review board that I referenced before. Security officers and police officers appear before the 5 division commanders and are interviewed, and that recommendation is given to the chief of police. some applicants have failed the final review board. And then there's an other category that can be a variety of things. Undetected domestic violence history of a former spouse or current girlfriend or current spouse is interviewed and will indicate that, you know, this person is violent and so forth. And that can be corroborated somewhat with the applicant, and obviously we're not going to hire them, they're going to be NVQ'd. So those are the examples of how we track that. And then if you go to the second page, I'm looking at 2020 now, just for a point of reference. So we hired in 2020 a total of 119 employees. That second category, it should be, I apologize, percentage of the 119 total hired, commissioned, that was 45%, professional staff was 55% of that 119. And then the breakdown by race of the 119 hired, 76% white, 13% black, and 5% Hispanic, 2% Asian, and almost,
Not the stats. Thank you.
okay.
What are the stats telling us from a professional perspective?
So if you look at hired commission by race, in the middle of that same page, we are making progress. That's what it tells me. Because here we have a total of 24.5% minorities if we're commissioned, 24.5% minorities, 9.5% African American hired in 2020. Those statistics back in 19 were only 5% African American and only 15% minority. And in 18, it was only 12% minority and 6.3% African American. So as you can see, we are making progress. Same with hiring female police officers. Nearly 40% of our hires last year were female officers. In 19, that was only 21%. In 18, it was only 12.5%. So that's the kind of progress we're making. It's steady and it keeps increasing year to year.
So with a limited amount of resources and time, do we have a plan for what we're going to focus on? Is our focus to get the greatest number of applicants? Is our focus, let's figure out where we're getting those the most quality applicants and hit those targets harder?
It's the latter. It's the latter.
Okay.
Because if you just focus on applicants, you're just going to clog up the background process, the recruiting process. I mean, we could go out to a bunch of different schools and say, hey, come on, you want to be a police officer, you want to work for the police department. But that is going to bring you a lot of applicants and a lot more work. It's not without some of its benefits, but we target more. So Women's Day in Law Enforcement, it isn't open to everybody. We have the recruiters and other employees target, go to the schools. Hey, you're getting a criminal justice degree. Maybe you want to be a professional staff member analyzing crime statistics. Maybe you want to go into the business world. What about coming and joining the professional staff or being a police officer? We're going to give you that exposure to law enforcement. So it's somebody with 1 foot already in the door, if you will. So it's more of the targeting because that's where you get your greatest percentage and the most efficient use of people, of your staff.
Carl, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned recruitment, particularly of African Americans, that you were focused on HBCUs, and we only have one HBCU in the region. So that sort of limits us. Are we partnering with the community colleges, since it's only 64 hours required? Are we partnering with the community college or partnering other community colleges for their recruitment? Because the chance of getting Howard University graduate to move here is not gonna, it's pretty slim.
And the short answer is yes. I would also add that even though Lincoln University has started their own academy before we could get our foot in the door, it's still an opportunity for us to recruit there, and it's really right down the street. So Captain Kelly and I are meeting with Aristotle. They had to, because of the recent events with their university, they had to put off our meeting. And then the same with Lincoln University. We're going to be meeting with them, rendering any assistance we can or advice because they're starting up their own academy. If they can utilize our resources, I mean, there's a nationwide network of sharing curriculum and job or course descriptions and so forth. So where we can help them, we will do that. I go out even a little further. University of Central Missouri, they have an academy on their campus. It's not affiliated with the university, but many criminal justice students utilize that academy. We're also going to target some Southern Illinois universities. We have some alum from Western and Eastern Illinois. They were football players there. We're going to go to that campus. We're going to target those interested in criminal justice and hit the athletic programs too.
Okay, everyone, we may want to take this offline. I interpreted HBCUs to be plural. You said we were recruiting HBCUs.
Yes.
All right, we're not just going to Aristotle, we're going to
Well, that's
our local kids go from here to a Tennessee State, to a Jackson
Sure.
State, and then migrate back.
Yes.
Okay.
And
My question then, I think I'll follow up with Commissioner Banks. So we've got, what, 4 community college campuses? And so have you visited any of those or talked with any of the recruitment specialists?
we have not actually visited because of COVID, but we are going to visit with them face to face and push out that message, get to their job fairs, get to their classes. We already have that relationship with UMSL where our officers will go and the staff is very helpful. We have a lot of UMSL graduates here in the police department. Their staff, their professors are very helpful in reaching out for assistance. Hey, can you have a crime scene unit guy come and talk, and that sort of thing, whatever their particular class is. And so we have a good relationship with them, even though several months ago, I think I informed the board that we tried to get them to be tuition enrollment like some of the other universities. And although it was a wonderful conversation, they respectfully declined that.
At lunch yesterday, the colleague of mine who is on their board, St. Louis County Community College Board, presented the idea of having this to him, right? How can we deepen our relationships with you? And he said they would be very welcome to that conversation with you. Talk afterwards.
I appreciate it. And that's another analysis that Chief Gregory has initiated as to whether we want to reach out to the community colleges for that tuition enrollment. So as you know, Maryville and Lindenwood, a bachelor's degree candidate their last semester, they'll attend our academy, they'll get their 15 hours credit, and then they become post-certified. We could do the same thing on somebody in a criminal justice or other program for that last semester, albeit they only take 64 hours to come out with an associate's degree and then also being post-certified. And that's an option we've been considering. So page 3 is the NBQ data broken down. And you can see all the statistics there. What I want to point out is that you'll see the number is 224. And of the number higher doesn't equal 2,177. That's because on the pre-screen that I referenced, in addition to the voluntary withdrawals, that's on page 5, but the pre-screen starts at page 7, and those are the applicants that don't meet the initial qualifications. You apply for police officer, you don't have those basic qualifications. They will go into that 856 number that they're pre-screened, and they generally don't get anything given to them for a couple of reasons. One, we don't have the staffing to tell them, hey, you don't qualify because of this. We don't have the automation to generate a letter to tell them that. And the third thing is what is automated is once the time expires, once 6 months goes by, they'll get a notification via their email. You need to resubmit your application. So, some people, for whatever reason, that, you know, and we all see it with applicants, they'll apply even though they don't quite meet the qualifications. And they're not gonna get processed through in general. We just don't have the staffing to address those 856 in 2020. It was much greater in 18 and 19.
How do we get that ability? How much would it cost to get some sort of software to automate?
I can find out because what that, and I think I've described this before too, you know, NeoGov is a huge pie, but we're only purchasing a slice. There's a lot more. They have seminars and conferences nationwide to try and get you to buy more of their product, you know, because you have to pay for everything, mostly on an a la carte basis, but I can find it out.
I think that's a big miss for us, not sending a letter to those people. Because if they really do want to be an officer and they don't qualify for whatever reason, let's tell them why, so that they can meet whatever requirements. And two, I think it's just common courtesy to let somebody know, if they put the energy into a.
And I would agree. So that's an overview of the NVQ process. Like I said, it's a lot to digest. The numbers can be compared and pulled in a different fashion if you so desire. And so, you know, obviously, I look forward to talking about it more. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Becker. I'm a legal assessor, get assignments that go throughout the United States, assessments on different police departments. And our issues with hiring minorities, hiring females, is pretty much nationwide. I listened to the initiatives that we have here in St. Louis County, and I haven't seen too many other agencies. Our goal is to try to follow up on the initiative that we have, try to see some success. But everybody's having the same issues, African Americans. I have just a short update on Teneo. If you look at your packet, there's a graph in there, I believe. And what Faith has done with that graph is that she highlights the 94 issues that we're dealing with. And what she's done is she's tried to let you know where we are with each one of those 94 initiatives. Obviously, they're not listed. Whether we started the initiative or finishing that initiative, where we're at in that initiative. And as you can see, the more that we start, obviously the less that needs to get done goes down. This will be presented to you every month. And as a matter of fact, if we want, we could show you, are you up there? Yeah. We could show you what it compared to last month as to what it looks like this month. And that's an example of what we've done. It's just a matter of us, like I said, getting into these issues and trying to make some progress with them. We could give you a narrative of each one that we do, but it would be pretty intensive for you to read through. But that's kind of an idea, and any other questions you might have about that, and we can deal with it. We have completed our week-long, month-long Courageous Conversations Teneo. That happened every Tuesday in the month of July. We completed that with them. Scheduled for August the 25th, 26th, and 27th. We have a retreat scheduled with Teneo. And again, it's going to be 3 days of talking with our agency, people from our agencies, dealing with courageous conversations, basically dealing with racial issues that we're dealing with. And that's what we want to be, courageous conversations. We started a courageous conversation with our department at the end of 2020, something that Captain Juan Cox put together. We had some moderators handling those courageous conversations, and it was going pretty well, but these were professional people who were taking time away from their job, and we weren't compensating them, so they figured, well, you know, I can't take too much time from my job. The advantages that I saw with courageous conversations in reference to our racial issues is that we were talking about these things. We were talking about them, getting some insight from different people about how they felt about race and how they were brought up in different neighborhoods, things like that. And I think it was beneficial. Part of the courageous conversations in July, great input. And then we're looking forward to talking with them later this month. That's about it. Commissioner, I mentioned to you that in our board meetings before COVID, used to present awards to upcoming officers for whatever it was that they did. And obviously, because of COVID, we got away from that. We got a smaller venue to deal with, but we're going to try to get back to that. Okay? And the first one that I want to do today, as far as an award, is to Police Officer Stanley Dooley. I'm going to have his commander come up and let you know just what Stanley was involved in. Lieutenant Martin.
Good afternoon. I'm actually going to try to do both of them at once because I think it's they kind of both tie together. I think most people remember June the 2nd, 2020, where the city experienced 4 officers being shot and the loss of Captain Dorn. St. Louis County was very instrumental in that as well. The Special Response Unit, along with our tactical operations and our emergency response unit, all assisted St. Louis City on that venture to try to bring order back to their area. After doing so, we returned back to the county area to try to bring order back to our area. During that time period, it was radioed that a vehicle was firing shots at some city officers, and the Special Response Unit, SRU, with Officer Dooley and some other officers that were in the vehicle, identified the vehicle. There was a small chase that ensued. That vehicle came to a stop in the area of Jennings. At that time, multiple people exited the vehicle. Officer Dooley gave chase. Upon jumping the fence, and one of the suspects fired 1 round at Officer Dooley. Dooley was professional and calm and was able to eliminate that threat by firing back. At that time, the officers from Special Response Unit that were close behind were able to render aid to the suspect by applying 2 tourniquets and a chest seal, ultimately saving this person's life, showing the professionalism of St. Louis County. Even in that face of that situation, they still provided aid. After doing so, they were able to do a very extensive canvass of the area and find another suspect. 2 guns were recovered. Other items of evidence were also recovered. Without being said, I know a lot of people talk about what took place on that day in the city, but I was there. St. Louis County did a tremendous job, and this is just one of those awards that identifies that. The actual unit is receiving a chief's accommodation as a whole. That's where you see all the officers here. And Officer Dooley got the Medal of Valor. I just want to say thank you. I'm actually the unit commander over this unit. I'm extremely proud to be in that position, but they do an outstanding job every day to do those numbers that we talked about with the Violent Crime Initiative. They are instrumental in that as well. So we want to take time today to let you know what SRU does and also what Stanley Dooley did on that day.
Sure.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
I got this one. We got covered. All right, everyone, me.
Outstanding. Thank you.
Hold on.
Don't go no.
Guys, hold on just a second. One more second. Hey, guys.
Stand by.
Hold on. Sorry, you can leave in just a second.
One more second.
Officer Julie, we are truly honored to present you with this medal.
Thank you.
Commissioner, if I could, as Lieutenant Morgan said, I was out there that night also, when all this happened in St. Louis City, and they called for our assistance, and our entire unit, along with tactical operations, responded and gave them some assistance. And as he stated earlier with the award to Officer Dooley, this entire unit played a great part during what happened that night. And again, one of the most important things that they did was they actually saved that guy's life. That suspected of shooting four police officers. They worked to make sure that he survived. So I give them credit for that. I give them credit for the overall job that they do, the leadership that they have, and great unit to have. And for that reason, I want to award to the entire unit for what they did. Take it for let me take his mask.
Oh, okay.
Give me the code.
Excellent. Now that's when we should have had them all up there.
I believe the crime lab can pick up both officers as well, so.
Commissioners, in my report.
Thank you.
These gentlemen back out, please.
You need to get back out.
Yes. I have no idea either. I was like, okay, this must be.
Rest of you get a chance to sit down now. Come on, grab a seat.
We have these minutes from July 15th, July 23rd, and July 30th. We have a motion to approve those minutes.
I move that the minutes be approved from the previous
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those meeting minutes are. Do we have any letters and communications? I don't see it here. Just confirming you don't have any. No, okay. Any old business? Okay, we will move on to new business. We have several contracts to approve today. I will read them out in bunches. The first contract is a professional services agreement with Van Meter and Associates Incorporated for a new contract to provide the academy with an instructor to teach a program entitled Quota Free Police Productivity System. The second is a professional services agreement with Van Meter and Associates to teach a course at the academy entitled Absenteeism Control and Tracking System. Professional service agreement with Van Meter and Associates for an academy course titled Applied Leadership Principles. And a professional services agreement with Van Meter and Associates to provide an academy course titled Discipline and Termination, Rules, Policies, and Procedures. Do you have any discussion on these contracts?
No, but didn't we approve these last week?
I think those were different. I think they
No,
were
it's
different
the
courses,
Well,
same
I think
instructor.
the courses look the same to me. I wondered if it was the contract. I'm
I
not approving them again, just.
can check that really quickly.
We have typically had the same. Yeah, no, that is offered on different dates that has to be approved every time, and sometimes it's the same class.
That answers the question.
I think these are primarily different courses, certainly. And do I have a motion to approve these contracts?
Contracts.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. These contracts are approved. The next is a professional services agreement with TriTech Forensics Incorporated for an academy course titled Courtroom Testimony for Forensic Science Professionals Course. A professional services agreement with Patrick E. Warren for an academy course titled First Line Supervision. A professional services agreement with Patrick E. Warren for an academy course titled Instructor Development Course, and a professional services agreement with Training Force USA LLC for an academy course titled Use of Force Analysis. Do we have any discussion on these contracts? May I have a motion to approve these contracts?
Move that these contracts be approved.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
These contracts shall be approved. The next is a professional services agreement with Vista Law Enforcement Training and Consulting LLC for an academy course titled Preparation for Retirement. A professional service agreement with Vista Law Enforcement Training and Consulting LLC for an academy course titled Advanced Homicide Investigations. A professional service agreement with Vista Law Enforcement Training and Consulting LLC for an academy course titled New Detective Workshop. A professional service agreement with Legal and Liability Risk Management Institute for an academy course titled Kinesic Interview and Interrogation Techniques. A professional services agreement contract with Legal and Liability Risk Management Institute for an academy course titled Implicit Bias De-Escalation Procedural Justice, a call for change in law enforcement training and operations. Do we have any discussion on these contracts? We have a motion to approve these contracts.
Move that these contracts be approved.
Second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. These contracts shall be approved. Next is a professional services agreement with IXII Group for an academy course titled Communication Training Officer. Professional services agreement with Public Grants and Training Initiatives for an academy course titled Rescuing the Rescuers. And a grants award of contract 2020 Paul Coverdell Forensic Science Improvement. A recommendation to approve a new award of contract and certification assurances for the 2020 Paul Coverdell Forensic Science Improvement Grant administered by the Missouri Department of Public Safety.
The award amount is $35,674 and it will be used to fund training for crime-led employees as well as the purchase of a forensic field station. Any discussion on these contracts? I have a motion to approve these contracts.
The contracts with
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. These contracts shall be approved. Next on our agenda is a public forum. Do we have any comments for public forum?
Commissioners, this letter is dated August 11th, 2021. We are concerned with the current management trend for the police department. It has been occurring for some years now, but it's reached a point that must be addressed. That trend can be summarized into one statement that accurately describes our commanders. The rules do not apply to us. The point that has brought me to you today is the issuance of Special Order 21-416 that makes us a major change to the promotional process general order that was approved by this very board on December 16th, 2020. The current board approved policy allows for the chief of police to call for an additional promotional process at the end of July. Because of the incompetence of the department's leadership, former Chief Barton did not call for this process. Instead, she tried to change the policy without the approval of this board. As of July 13th, former Chief Barton was attempting to violate the authority of the police board by issuing the special order instead of having a new process approved by current policy. Unfortunately, this undermining of the police board did not cease with the tenure of former Chief Barton. On July 30th, Acting Chief of Police Gregory issued the exact same special order that his predecessor was planning to implement. Special orders are used for clarifications of policy or isolated events or incidents. Special orders cannot contradict current board-approved policy. This must be investigated by this board. In closing, there has been a fallacy conveyed to this board. There is a notion that the 101 employees that have retired or resigned already this year are leaving the profession. This is patently false, and I implore you to ask more questions of the department's commanders and question the data that you are given. The hardworking men and women of this department are fed up. They are exhausted with the attitude and practice of department commanders changing and violating policies when it suits their personal agendas. They are tired of being ignored. That is why they are leaving in droves. Thank you for your time and service to this department. I look forward to hearing from you. Sincerely, Matt Vasilius, SLCPA Business Manager. That's all.
The Board of Police Commissioners may vote to go into closed meeting for review of claims and lawsuits involving the police department, section 610.0211 RSO and section 114.0201 SLCRO, discussion of employees and personnel matters, sections 610.0213 and 13 RSO and sections 114.0203 and 13 SLCRO, and an update on union negotiations, section 610.0219 RSO and section 114.0209 SLCRO. I have a motion to hold a closed meeting.
Second.
Do we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Ashworth?
Yes.
Commissioner Banks?
Yes.
Commissioner Hassler?
yes.
Commissioner Schwer?
Yes. We will now be in closed session.